we have now got a live Q&A with Priya Mystery, Scientific Director, Leadership Expert, and we'll be talking about well-being in the workplace through her own lived experience with over 10 years of experience. Not only that, she is my lovely sister, so please can we give her a round of applause?
Welcome, Priya. Thank you.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good. Are you enjoying the fair?
Yeah, honestly, it's been just so lovely to be in a room full of people who just have good energy. And yeah, I think I'm all talked out. So
Well, we will be asking you some questions. So we're looking forward to finding out a little bit more and your insights. And if anyone has any questions at the end for Priya, please save them. She's more than happy to answer them. So what is a scientific director?
it's a good question. And it's a question that I get asked quite a lot. So I work in an industry called medical communications. It's an industry that is quite big, yet it's so unknown. And so essentially what we do is we work with pharmaceutical companies to turn their complex data and complex science into education that ultimately supports doctors and other healthcare professionals in getting the right drugs to the right patients at the right time.
So how does what you do relate to well-being in the workplace?
So I started my career in medcoms 10 years ago, and I started at the most junior level, and that was an associate medical writer. And I've spent the last 10 years kind of climbing the career ladder to the role that I am now. And I think well-being is something that becomes more and more important as you become more senior in your roles, because it moves from you being an individual contributor as somebody who has strong technical skills and I can do my job well, to the more you progress, it starts becoming about how do you work with teams? How do you support people? And I would say now more and more in my role, I have a more day-to-day expectation to not only do my job, but also ensure that my teams are well and okay and feel empowered and supported and they feel equipped to do the best that they can do. So I think for me, the reason why well-being is becoming so important is because I have a really big pastoral care element of my role now. And I can also see where well-being, when it's not maintained or when it's not great, can really impact people. And I think that's, for me, why it's such a big deal now.
It's interesting you say that because it feels like in your role as a leader, a lot of what you do is about being aware. And so being aware of our mental health, our team's mental health, and what kind of support is needed sounds like it's a priority as a director and leader in your role. Am I right?
Yeah, I would say so.
So then what in your definition does mental health mean to you?
It's a good question. I think the words or the term mental health, in and of itself, I don't think it really is positive or negative. So I think we all have mental health in the same way that we all have physical health. Sometimes that physical health is good and great, and sometimes that physical health is poor. In the same way, I'm sure every one of us here have experienced times of really amazing mental health and other times where we've struggled and we've had poor mental health. So with that in mind, I would say that having good mental health is what I would describe as space. And I know that sounds like a strange word to use, space or capacity. And it essentially is if you have good mental health, you have more of a capacity to deal with life stresses, adapting to change, making decisions, processing your emotions. There's just a bit more flexibility in your ability to do that with resilience and from a place of stability. And then on the flip side, I would say poor mental health is almost a lowered capacity or tolerance to deal with the same things. And I'm sure we've all experienced times in our lives where we have less of a capacity to make decisions or, adapt to that small change or, be okay with uncertainty.
Thank you. I think a lot of people can resonate in terms of time and capacity to look after our well-being. Uh, Everyone's jobs or what they do day to day can actually impede on their ability to make capacity to prioritize well-being, whether it's going for a walk or having lunch. Who here actually has meetings during their lunch hours and doesn't actually get a chance to eat? Is that good for our well-being, mental health? We have no energy, pass out on the floor, and then what? We go to a workshop at work for what? Resilience to starvation? No. Thank you. So I think time, this is why you've created an event like this, create the time and be mindful and actually understand that it's important to carve out that regardless of our timelines and emails and things that maybe aren't as important as eating lunch. So what is it about what you do that supports your well-being?
So I always say this to people. So I've been in this career for 10 years and I wouldn't be in it this long if there weren't parts of my job that I love. So I always say to people, I love my job. Yes, it's stressful and it can be very overwhelming at times. So fundamentally, I love it. And the thing that got me into the industry and the thing that I still stay true to is it supports my well-being because I'm somebody who feels a lot of joy from things like creativity and storytelling, which might sound a bit strange hearing that from somebody who's a medical writer, because I think often people hear medical writer and you probably think, regulatory writing or manuscripts, but a lot of what we do is turning science and complex concepts into stories and messaging that really helps resonate with doctors and other healthcare professionals. So for me, it's that creative element. So it's not just visual creative, it's creative problem solving. And the other part of my job that really brings me joy is the fact that I get to work with other people. I'm somebody that loves collaborating and connecting. And in my job, I get to do that quite a lot. So I would say overall, that's how it supports my well-being, which is strange to say because most people, you know, don't always love their jobs. I feel quite lucky to say that at its core, I do love what I do.
It's important to love what you do, maybe not always, but the core of what we choose to do is in alignment with who we are as people. Would you say that creativity can be created in any role? Is that something that you find you've done, or is it your role is actually a creative role itself?
We didn't prepare this question before, so I might need a second. No, I think that everyone can be creative. I think where we sometimes fall down is the fact that we assume creativity is being artistic or being able to draw. I can't draw, but I love crafts and doing things with my hands. I love problem solving, which is also really creative. I love bringing words to life on a piece of paper. That's creative. So yeah, I think that everyone has creativity, but I think it's just about finding what version of creativity is for you. In my industry, for sure, we're a bunch of problem solvers because we work with clients, and a lot of our clients come to us with challenges and problems that we need to help them solve. So I think a lot of what we do is super creative, even if on paper it's not that design thing or we didn't create an app. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I would say so.
And thank you for answering the impromptu question. Why is well-being in the workplace something you're passionate about, and what impact do you have?
I'm passionate about well-being because if I think about my experience with people that I've worked with, people that have mentored me, line managed me, they have been very good role models and templates for that support. And I think as somebody who was junior into my role, having those people around me and seeing, "Oh, you know what, I want to be like them because they really helped me, not just professionally. When you're, 20 something year old trying to figure out working life, you're not just trying to figure out the professional world. There's a lot of pressures on a 20 something year old to kind of get everything figured out. So they were really people that were invested in who I was, whether I was okay. And I think I always wanted to operate in a similar way, having those kind of people as inspiration. So that's why now I choose to show up in those ways because I had those examples set for me. So for me, I want to give back the same thing that I received from those people.
No, I like it. Mentorship and helping others through lived experience is really, really important. And a few of us have actually talked about this, whether it's on the podcast episode that Priya and Prash have been on. It's really important to surround yourself with mentors and coaches and people that can help educate you in the right way. So from your experience, which you have a lot, which is incredible, what's one or some of the early warning signs of poor mental health at work that most leaders miss, and why does it get overlooked?
I think this is a bit of a tough question because I think sometimes companies probably want a tick box exercise. These are the things that you look for, and then I flag it, and there's some sort of process. But if I'm completely honest, those signs of poor mental health, they vary from person to person. It's so unique. And so what I would say is the biggest piece of advice for one is get to know your people. So it's not just get to know the work of your people, get to know how they operate at baseline. Who are they? Are they those people that are joking in the team meetings? Are they those people that come to you with, oh, here's a problem and I've got a solution? Are they the ones pushing back? So get to know who they are when they are doing well, because what happens is I find that the reasons why things get missed as early signs is because the shift in behavior is what you want to look for. And if you don't know your people well enough, you miss the shift. And what I mean by that is it can be as subtle as somebody saying something like, yeah, it's really busy, I'm quite overwhelmed, but it's fine. And as soon as somebody says it's fine after saying I'm very overwhelmed and busy, that's my kind of flag in my mind. I'm going to follow up with that person. Are you actually okay? It's things like those people who are quite vocal in meetings. If they suddenly disengage or go quiet, I'm thinking, oh, you weren't quite yourself. Are you okay? And it's just, as a leader, I find it's observing people, knowing people, and then taking the initiative to care enough to reach out to them directly, because I think people aren't always going to come to you directly to say, I'm not okay. And I think with that in mind, I worry less about the people who are complaining about things overtly, because they're going to get the attention that they need and the support they need. Where I tend to focus is those people who are quieter, those ones that are the safe pair of hands, the ones that, will always just get things done, because those people are probably the ones that get overlooked because outwardly they seem functioning. So that's where I say, because you don't know your people so well enough, you don't see the shift until it gets to the point where perhaps that person might have to be signed off, and bigger signs and more serious signs of burnout then come before.
No, thank you. That was a really great answer. And it comes back to the point you made earlier about being aware and actively listening. Those two skills go hand in hand in terms of being able to actually get to know people, and actually knowing people's characters and when they're sort of acting slightly out of character that needs addressing or looked at. So thank you. This is one of my favorite questions. There is a lot of talk about, quote, supporting well-being at work, but what actually makes a measurable difference and what's just noise?
I feel quite strongly about this one. It's another one of those things where I think sometimes well-being can be seen as a tick box exercise. I think you can talk about well-being, but if you're not creating a culture that supports well-being or is conducive to good well-being, then you're not supporting well-being. And culture is really closely tied to how your leadership shows up and the behaviors that are demonstrated and kind of reinforced in the team. So that's what creates culture. It's not a piece of paper that says this is our culture. It's not a webinar that says let's talk about resilience or stress management. It's not a virtual yoga session. It's how are your leaders allowing people and enabling people to support their mental well-being. And so that's kind of where I feel quite passionately. And I think I've had experiences where you say you support well-being, but you don't respect people's boundaries around the times that they are working on logging off. You say that you support people's well-being, and yet when somebody comes to you and says they're stressed or overwhelmed, you just tell them, oh, it's just a busy period. You say that you support people's well-being and you say that you want them to have a good work-life balance, and yet for some reason you're not helping them prioritize their workload. So for me, it's very much about your words and actions have to align. And I think that if that's not happening, you can say that you're into well-being as much as you want, but if you're not behaving or showing up in that way, you don't support well-being.
Brilliant. Thank you. So then how can someone protect their mental well-being in a high pressure workplace when the culture itself hasn't caught up yet?
I will kind of put a bit of a disclaimer on that, because I think I will say if you're in a culture that isn't quite there yet, and you are somebody who's trying to push for practices that support well-being, it can be quite difficult and it can feel like you're going against the grain. What I will say is probably that means it is working and it probably feels a little bit uncomfortable. But something that I've been working on, I would say, over the last few years is boundaries. And I know that that's quite a big buzzword at the moment. And by that, I mean just figuring out what supports my well-being, but also figuring out what drains me and how best I need to protect myself to make sure that I'm giving in a balanced way that also means that I'm also getting back. I think along with that, being able to firmly communicate that and not fear as a recovering people pleaser, I would say I'm always worried about the fear of letting people down or saying no in case somebody doesn't like me. But at the end of the day, I've learned to put myself and my well-being first, because when I do that, I can show up well in the workplace too. So boundaries has been a big one for me. Yeah.
Thank you. If you could change one thing about how organizations approach mental health tomorrow, what would it be and what impact would it
This one's easy. Train your leaders. I think we think about leadership in an interesting way, and sometimes we use leadership and management interchangeably. But I think leadership is a completely different skill set. You can be great at your job and find yourself in a senior role because you're good at your job, but it doesn't automatically make you a leader. And so what I mean by that is, when you're a leader, you're not just an individual contributor anymore. Your job is to make sure that your teams feel supportive, they feel empowered to do their job well. And that requires a whole different skill set. So things like empathy and compassion and communication and holding people accountable, those are all what we consider soft skills, but they're not really soft skills, because those are the things that make leaders leaders. And I think I've always felt like I get told those things are not quite important, but I think they're the most important thing when you're working with people. So, and they're not also just things we're naturally born with. I think some people, the excuse can be, oh, well, I'm just not naturally empathetic. I'm just not really into feelings. I just think when no one's natural, it's a learned skill. And I think I really want to advocate for training your leaders and making sure that they're developing skills like emotional intelligence, because you can learn that. I've read tons of books on them. So yeah, it's something I feel very strongly about. Like, support your leaders and support all people, and I think that can really help.
I can feel the passion in this answer, and I absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Priya, for sharing and answer questions today. I'm actually going to open the floor to anyone if they have any questions for Priya. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? Oh.
What do you do if there's somebody who's been bullied and they work within the workplace? And let's say it's not just one person, that there are multiple individuals involved. How do you manage that at a local level? And how would you take that further to kind of nationally target it and to help people be supported?
Good question.
I think that's a really good question. And I think is one that has to be managed really carefully, because obviously when you use words like bullying, those are things that can be escalated quite quickly. And so you have to be very sure that what you're taking is sound. For me, that would be an escalation to working with my HR partners. And there's a whole process around that. But I guess kind of the bit before that, perhaps maybe the less escalated version, is around behaviors that are probably maybe not considered directly bullying, but perhaps can create an environment for people where they feel unsupported, critical. And I think for me, I've got to the point where I just don't really accept poor behavior. And for me, I'm somebody who, if I'm line managing somebody more junior, I will happily go and advocate for them, and I will raise it directly with the person around their behavior. And if they're not receptive to it, I will then escalate it to their line manager, because I think you do have to give opportunities for that feedback to be given and for people to adjust their behavior. I think the point at which it becomes an escalation problem is if those people are not willing to take accountability or to understand the impact of how they're showing up. And I know, maybe historically in workplaces, you just go, oh, that's just how so-and-so is, no, you don't have to accept that. And it's okay to call out poor behavior. I think people will excuse that behavior because they feel uncomfortable addressing it. So for me, I think especially as I've become more confident in myself, I'm not willing to allow people to just use the excuse of this is who I am. And one thing I will say is that I'm probably less likely to stick up for myself, but when it comes to my people, I don't question it. Yeah.
Thank you. Really good question. Any other questions? We'll take 2 more questions.
Thank you so much. It's just expanding on that, really. One, on the side where, what if it's your client, not your colleague? Because I've had that to me, or your customer. But yeah, in this case, it was quite a high regarded client.
I think no matter how senior you are in your role, working with people who have those behaviors can really make you lose confidence and make you kind of question whether you're good at your job or not. And I think that's something I've had to really remind myself of. But yeah, to your point, to be honest, probably deal with it in a similar way. I think it's very tricky when we're working with clients because there's always that kind of expectation of maintaining client relationships and business. There's that commercial aspect that you need to consider. So I might be direct with them in some situations if you have a good open relationship with those clients. But often if you do have tricky clients, chances are they're probably people who, again, probably lack a bit of self-awareness and probably might deflect. So for me, I then lean more into self-protection, just making sure that I can do the best I can in the way that I have minimum interaction or contact with them. Sometimes the commercial or the monetary gain isn't worth how you feel as a result of working with someone.
Thank you. I think we have one question here.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I've missed most of your talk, but except you didn't talk. I just want to ask you this one comment and one question, please. So community is fine. You said two things, which is almost I heard every organization. Virtual yoga sessions. We have assigned virtual yoga session for our staff, and there is no protected time for that. So whenever you're free, just go for that. This is not the support. And the other thing is, this is my comment, and it's happening in loads of organizations, I'm telling you. The other thing is, my question is, what is the role of the speaker guardian? So in any organization, so because I think if you project that, then staff can go to that person where they can talk to them, get them, and then and leaders and like you and then expert like you involved in it. Because in every organization, I work in NHS, so we just very, very keen about the speak up problems in every surgery, in every hospital, in every organization, so that staff can go to them and tell their problems openly, and it is very, very sort of safe environment. So this is why. So what's your opinion about speak up guardians?
It's not something that I have a lot of experience with, but how you describe it, honestly, it sounds like an amazing initiative. I think that if you can find people within your companies that are a safe space and that you know that you can talk to, I think that that is even better than having, a HR process. Ultimately it's about feeling supported and knowing that people are going to take you seriously. So while I don't know about this specifically, it sounds like a really great thing and something that should be advocated for and signposted to. In my company, we have things like mental health first aiders, we have wellbeing champions, and those people are really well signposted at that, as well as people just being encouraged to make their own connections and build their own communities for support, because all workplaces are stressful, and it helps to have people that you can turn to who will understand. So I hope that answers your question.
We have time for one more question. If anyone's got a question.
Hi, Priya. If you had to give yourself one piece of advice to when you were younger in the workplace, how would you manage your mental health? Like, what tip would you have? Because it can be quite intense. So what tip would you give to yourself? What advice?
I'm not sure I said this in one of my answers, but I think this really relates actually. There are a couple of mottos that I have in my head now that kind of stop the spiral, because I think as somebody who was really junior, perhaps wanted to really prove themselves, you would fear, letting people down or not saying no. And I think that if I had to give advice to myself when I was early in my career, it's you're not trying to be everyone's friend. Not everyone is going to like you. It's okay to say no sometimes. I was always that person. And don't get me wrong, work hard when you're earlier in your career. You do want to prove yourself. You want to climb the career ladder. You want the experience, but don't do it to the detriment of your own well-being. So I say when you make those decisions, do them from a place of intentionality of, right, I'm willing to give this. And if I don't get anything back, that's okay. It's a learning experience. I would tell myself, you're not trying to be everyone's friend. It's a motto that I go by, and I tell a lot of my line reports this, and we sort of say it at work, but it's not that deep. Most of us for our jobs are answering emails. We don't work in A&Es. We're not saving lives in that capacity. So it's really not that deep. And that's something that I keep going back to when we sort of laugh about it in work, because we realize it's really not that big of a deal. And the third one is I don't get paid enough to care this much. It sounds really silly, but it's not my company. Yes, I'm committed. I want to do well. I'm not the CEO of my company. I know for many of you, you are, and I think that commitment is very different. But in the corporate world where, you've got some person in some office somewhere who has no idea what's going on, I remind myself that the whole company does not rest on my shoulders. And so again, that just stops the spiral of me thinking, it's all on me. And yeah, so hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions and taking the time to hear from Priya. And please, can we give her a warm round of applause? Thank you. Okay.